Welcome to Inspiring Hopefulness. My name is Shamisa. Today I have a very special guest. His name is Roy Mynard.
I teach both visually impaired students and the students in the mainstream school. Being visually impaired myself, I find that both jobs are a challenge. When I say both jobs, I mean teaching visually impaired students, that's a challenge, and teaching sighted students, that also comes with its own challenge. But I'm the type of person that believe that challenges are just opportunities to bring out the best in yourself. I became blind, totally blind, I should say, at age 14. Before that, I wore spectacles for about 2 years. And what led up to the blindness or precipitate the loss of sight is the fact that I went swimming and we were playing with the mud, and one of my friends threw the mud in my eyes, and I washed it out to the best of my ability, but I didn't tell my parents or grandparents at the time, and so my sight deteriorated. From then, that happened about age 12, and by age 14 I was completely blind in both eyes. So in brief, that is the story of how I became blind. When I got blind, my mother was taking it on so much that I found myself comforting her. And what I used to do, unbeknownst to her, when nobody was there, I used to lock myself in my room and I would cry. But I would not let anybody know that I was grieving. So I had to put on a brave show for her sake to help her to cope, because she was taking it really, really badly. Who I am now is doubtless shaped by my experiences of the past. And I hope that I am striving towards being a good person. I would change a lot. I grew up for the first 14 years of my life. I grew up in the country. Grew up in uh, um, among farmers on farm, dealing with animals, running through the forest and that kind of thing. And when I became blind, I missed all of that. And I tell myself, if I had only listened to my parents who said to me, don't go swimming. I can remember the particular day the incident happened. My grandfather said, I don't want y'all to go swimming. I disobeyed it and I went. That would be one thing I would change. At the inception, when I became blind, I think that there was a certain element of embarrassment on my part and even on the part of my family, because blindness was, and I think still is, stigmatized for some reason. And because of that, I found myself shying away from society for a good couple years in my life. I didn't used to, I did not socialize, and I did not develop myself during those years as I could have. I think I would change that, because I would advise anyone who has somebody that is blind not to keep them away from the public, not to be ashamed, not to keep them as a recluse, because that can retard their development in more than one way, even emotionally, intellectually, and other ways. So the way in which I tried to hide my blindness initially, I would change that. Those are basically the things I would change. Now, as to whether I would change being blind, of course, I'd prefer not to be blind, because, as I said in the inception, I would obey my parents, my grandparents, and I think it is because of my disobedience that caused me to be here. So I'll definitely change that, because regardless of how well you cope as a blind person, it is still a loss. Not having vision means that there are certain things you can't participate in, especially when you were born with sight. You see, when you're born blind, then you don't know what you're missing. But when you are able to see up to a certain point in your life, then you tend to miss those things more. Knowing that I'm able to make a difference in the lives of others is a source of strength for me. And the fact that I'm able to empower people gives me power. The fact that I'm able to strengthen others gives me strength. It is a kind of feedback mechanism where we feed off of each other. All right? I give them, they give back. Somebody said that when you become a teacher, you learn as much from your students as they learn from you. And my journey as a teacher also has made me, to some extent, a real student of life, because I've been teaching now since 1998, and I think that I am a better person because of the lives that I've touched. So to answer your question, my strength, my courage comes from the students, from the people I help in life. I know that you would have people listening to this program from various parts of the world, and what happens is that different societies cope differently. So for example, in the West, everything would be handled by professionals. So you would call in the counselors and the specialists, and those are the people that deal with that. In other societies that are more traditional, you would find that you have more community-based help. The extended family is there as a source of strength. But based upon whichever part of the world you might be in listening to this program, one of the things that I would say to you, and also to the person who might be affected by, blindness or visually impairedness, is not to regard it as a curse, not to regard it as a setback, but to regard it as an opportunity to prove your strength. The fact that I can't see provided some very, very unique challenges for me to overcome. And notice I didn't say obstacles. And what I find is that, like, some people are born to be examples to others. And I've been in cases, in situations where when people hear of my story and see what I do, they say, oh, you make me feel like I can do that. So what I would say is this: anybody that experiences blindness or any form of disability for that matter, see it as the challenge that life has thrown out to you to prove how strong you are and to prove what inspiration that you can be to others. That would be my advice. Don't see it as a setback, but as an opportunity to go forward. I had so much help. Now, at the secondary school, I did CXC at St. Rose's High School. And to tell you the truth, I was charmed. I was amazed. I was really, really surprised at the level of maturity and love that I got from every single student at St. Rose's. And it's a strange thing. I can remember, like, at the end of the class, before I actually knew my way down from the classroom to the unit for the blind, because they had a unit for blind students downstairs at St. Rose's, and I had to go upstairs for classes because I attended the normal secondary school, the mainstream school. And at the end of the class, believe me, I had students who used to run, who used to compete with each other as who would be able to lead me downstairs. I can remember one particular girl, I think I was in the fourth form or maybe in the fifth, and every day she would come right at the end of the class to lead me downstairs. So this one day now, I decided, hey, I wanted to try this thing myself. So I sat next to the door, and as soon as the bell went pling, I got up and I started to make my way down the corridor to put some distance between myself and her. And then all I heard, clack, 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 clack. She was running, coming behind me. I remember students leading me downstairs to the unit for the blind and then thanking me for the opportunity to do so. It was a really, really wonderful experience, and you know, I really have to reflect on those days at St. Rose's, the support of the student, every single one of them. And when I was at Bishop's High School too, the same thing. At university, I had support. The lecturers are very supportive. But this is what I did. I tried to maximize the support that people give, but at the same time to ensure that that support system does not become a prop that retards your own development, that prevents you from being independent. Because what I find is that sometimes people can be so helpful that at the end of the process, you are not really an independent person. You have not been able to exercise your skills. And so, while I'm thankful for all of the help, especially at the university, I decided to step out on my own. I'll give you an example. It's like my first year at university, the admin came to me and they said, look, we're gonna provide a reader to read for you in the exams, in the final exam. So they did that the first year. So there was somebody there sitting with me reading the questions, and I had this typewriter. And then I said, hey, this is nonsense. The following year, I walked with a tape recorder, and I said to the invigilator, just read the questions for me. I had the tape recorder, I had earphones, and I was able to rewind, fast forward, go. And for the rest of my university life, when the admin came to me and said, we're gonna provide a read, I said, I don't need that. So what I'm saying is that in as much as people can be helpful, and you don't want to be ungrateful or stop people from being helpful, because as I said, you know, for some strange reason, like when I was at St. Rose's, students used to thank me for allowing them to help. But at the same time, you have to make up your mind to be independent, and those areas that you can help yourself, right? Do it. And also, but don't do it in such a way that people might think that you don't need them. Because I also found out that when you refuse help, you also refuse people an opportunity to exercise their better self. Sometimes, even when I don't need the help, just to give people the opportunity to do something good, I would accept it. But at the same time, position yourself in such a way that you don't need it. Accept the help, but don't need the help.
Thank you very much for sharing your story with us today. Your experience is both empowering and inspiring. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today.
Yeah, and thank you very much for the opportunity to share. And I hope that people out there with disabilities and people who come into contact with people who have disabilities will be able to help them to empower themselves so that we would have a situation where all of us are able to be inspiration. Thank you very much.